Hello.
Welcome. Give folks a couple minutes to join in here. Right now, I've got Vlad and Scott set as presenters. Please feel free to chat. And then I should be able to, at the end, kind of open things up. We are going to use 4 slides today, so everybody's in for a treat. Most of this is going to be the experience and content from Scott and Vlad, so very excited to learn about their use cases and how they got unstuck with Slack. I am also just sharing my own personal problems here in New York, dealing with one laptop screen, which I've never shared screen and slides at the same time. So we're all going to get to watch me struggle with that. But again, we only have 4 slides, so that's okay.
The trick is if you have only one screen, make sure to put it in like do not disturb mode.
Right. You want to say more about that?
Are you in a Windows or Mac?
Mac.
Yeah, so in the top left, where you have the little or in the
Oh,
top right where you have the little icons. If you put in do not disturb, then you don't get notifications while you're presenting. It's the little icon in the top right, or it should be in the.
like the focus time one.
Yeah, yeah.
Way to go. Learning so much. Good morning. All right, let's get going. I'm going to lose visual for a hot second here, but that's okay. Okay. Are you seeing the full presentation mode?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. All right. Like I said, 4 slides. Most of this is content. I'm super excited that Scott and Vlad agreed to join us today and get us started with a series about getting unstuck with Slack, out of the box functionality to get folks more comfortable solving everyday business problems with Slack. We don't want you to be intimidated. So the goal is to really be able to walk away with something that you can use or get you brainstorming about how simple it is to really build what you need off of Slack. So I will talk for maybe another minute or so, and then high level intro Scott and Vlad, and then we'll do a little bit more in-depth intros when it's their turn, and then they're going to talk through how they got unstuck with Slack and the business use cases that they have. My name is Nicole. I'm the King of Prussia PA Slack community leader. I am a senior project manager at SaltClick. So we're a Salesforce consulting firm. I do a lot of hands-on keyboard work as well. And I get to play around with Slack a lot, which makes me happy. And today we've got Scott and Vlad. They are also chapter leaders, Scott for San Antonio, Texas, and Vlad for San Francisco, California. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves, and very excited. So let's get started with Scott. Let me see if I can pause my screen share. Guys, claps for me. I did it. Okay.
All right. Very good. Very good. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Scott Patton. As Nicole said, thank you for the quick introduction. I am the chapter leader for San Antonio. I saw, hope I'm pronouncing this right, Anna Lilia from San Antonio. So good to see you here. I haven't checked to see if you're a member of our chapter yet, but hopefully you are. So a little bit about me. I do work for a large telecommunications company. You may have heard of it, called Verizon. We are one of Slack's largest customers. We have roughly over 200,000 users. At last count, we have over 900,000 Slack channels. And I'm part of a team that that administers and deals with that enterprise grid. So we use Slack very heavily, and I'm certainly involved in it. Kind of what got me started with Slack about 4-ish years ago was Slack workflows. Slack workflows came out. I started to learn them, see what they were all about. Started to learn how to automate things within Slack, and workflows have kind of become my bread and butter. Um, for those who know me, they call me the Slack workflow king, because I seem to know more about Slack workflows than Slack themselves. So um,
I'm glad you said it, Scott, because I was going to say that is how we know you, and you are amazing on the forums and in the Slack community. So definitely
mhm.
jump in there if you're not already. And I think this is probably a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are workflows your favorite feature? Are they something that you suggest people just jump in? Don't fear the workflow.
It's kind of two different questions. Is it my favorite feature? Since it's near and dear to my heart and kind of what got me started on my admin Slack admin stuff, I would have to say they're my Slack. They're my favorite feature. They're so useful in the sense that you can pull different things together within Slack. You can use them for something fun, which is kind of what I'm going to show you today. You can use them for business processes. We have a lot of help channels in our environment, so people go to these help channels and use workflows to ask questions for help. Workflows are they're kind of the basic building blocks of automation within Slack. And as Slack likes to say, Slack is where work happens, and workflows are just a certain part of that. And you can tie in not only other applications with workflows, but you can tie in other Slack features within workflows. You can use lists in a workflow. You can use Canvas in a workflow, and you can update a canvas and update a list with workflow, and do things in different channels with workflows. So workflows to me kind of tie the whole ecosystem together. So yes, I suggest you to highly to just jump in right in there and get involved with workflows. And yes, they are my favorite feature. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That makes me even more excited about workflows. But what was the problem or use case that you were trying to work through?
so so since it is my favorite feature, I am going to talk about workflows today. The use case or the problem that was kind of brought up to me, and this has been more than once, um, was we have a team of people that wanted to, um, usually around every January timeframe, people start wanting to get back to the gym and and start working out. So there have been a number of teams that wanted to do a quote unquote step challenge, where they wanted to track, how many steps are you're doing, and kind of track it by teams and things like that. So we've created a number of we've done this for a number of teams, but we created a step challenge, where users could go into Slack, track their report and track their steps that they've walked throughout the day or days. It tracks it throughout the whole program, and provides results to the team. So let me share my screen, and we're going to kind of jump right into it. Um, Unfortunately, I can't show you real data, um, due to our environment. So I've made some um, made up data, but these are the exact workflows in Google Sheet that we're using. I just changed the names to protect the innocent. All right, so you should see my screen here. This is just an example, of the exact worksheet that we used, um, Google Sheet that we used, and we'll get into the workflows shortly. But here we have a Google Sheet, which has the email addresses of our participants, the name of the participants, um, and the team. So they're teams. Of course, for your event, you can have 3, 4, 5 teams. Um, so the Google Sheet is just broken out it's just a table of their email addresses, the names, and their team name. And we'll get over to this other stuff in a few minutes. Then I have another tab for submitted data. So this is when they submit their steps in a workflow. And then I have just kind of a generic sheet which kind of tracks different things in the workflow variables, and we'll kind of get to that in a second. All right, so let me minimize this. And let's go into a channel. Oops, let me switch workspaces. So here's the channel that I created for here. This is a channel where people can put in their steps. So I have one workflow. It's a feature workflow. The program is called our Don't Fall Step Challenge. And this is a workflow where users can click to fill out how many steps they created. So if I were to launch this workflow, up pops a form that says, okay, who do you want to add steps for? Maybe you're an executive assistant and you want to add steps for your executive because he doesn't spend much time in Slack, or you want to do it for somebody else because they can't get into it. So you select the user that you want to add your steps to. You select your date that you want to add your steps to, like I want to report my steps for today. Say it's at night and I want to report that I walked this many steps. And I walked, let's say 9,742 steps. So once I submit that, using the workflow, that will report all that data to the sheet, to the Google Sheet, and I'll show you that. And it also prints out to the channel that new steps have been added. There's my name, there's the date, and how many steps I walked, and it gives me a summary of my weekly total of 26,781. So I've walked 26,000 steps this week. Now, if we go to the, whoops, wrong one. If we go to the worksheet, submitted data, you'll see here that this is where the data was added to the Google Sheet. This is who I did it. This is who I did it for. I submitted it for this date, 9,742 steps, and I've got some other formulas here, which really don't matter here. But if I go back and look at my participant list, you'll see here I've got my current week to date count, my current month to date count, and a current team count for the week, current team count for the month. And then we called it a program because the program kind of extends for 2 or 3 months. So I have a formula which calculates, how much the team did month to date, how much the team did for the program. This is the individual program count, and this is the overall average by team. So after Slack puts it in the Google Sheet, this Google Sheet has formulas, as you can see right at the top here. And these are just formulas that calculate all these data, all this, it just adds a bunch of stuff, all the data based on what's done in submitted data. So how does this further help us? Well, if we go back to the channel, now our users can run reports and see who's winning, or how everybody's doing. So if I go to the workflows, I can get a report of all the teams. If I can get a report of just team 1, team 2, or team 3. Well, I'm on team 3, so let me just run this workflow. I want to know what the results are for team 3. All right, so I clicked run that. There's my pop-up that it said it did it. And there's my pop-up. So there's team 3 reports. So this is actually, that says team 2, but I should say team 3. So here's a workflow which reads all those values in the Google Sheet and provides a report of every single user, what their steps are for the week, the month, and the. Likewise, if I want to see all the all the teams, I can just go to team totals, run this workflow. And you'll see that a request report has been submitted. If I want to go to the sidebar and view the team reports, it'll show up in a second. We'll wait for that. There it goes. There it's highlighted. And so now if I scroll down to the latest message, now I'll see all the teams and what their data is. For instance, my team 3, and here's my current week total, my weekly average per user, and as well as the monthly average and overall team average. So this was kind of a use case that we built for a number of teams where they wanted some sort of contest to kind of track steps over a period of time that users could go into Slack, fill out a form, and then again, it submits it to a sheet, which kind of does all the calculations, and then using workflows, it sends it back to the channel. So that was a quick showing you how we did that quickly. What questions do we have?
Nothing in the chat yet, but that was awesome. I
Okay.
love a good spreadsheet. So I love that not only can we push data to it, we can grab from it as well.
Yes, exactly. And again, this is just a simple G sheet, which just adds the data. As you can see, I've got formulas up here, which calculate the data per user, and then it using the workflows, it just reads it back and submits it and puts it in the chat. So all right. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in chat, and I'll answer them as we get to them.
Oh, Mazin is a great question. Would you mind showing us one of the workflows? Are you able to do that?
Oh yeah. Oh, certainly. Let me go back to. Sure. So actually, I built them out here. So when a user adds the information, when they want to add the information, so the first thing it does is it starts from a link, which you saw. Then I collect the info in a form. So I ask, who are you adding the steps for? What date are you doing it? And it's a date field in your form, and then a number. How many steps did you complete for the day? So that's my form. And then what it does is it does a few different things. First thing it does is it updates the G sheet with just a random variable, and that gets the G sheet to do its calculations. It's kind of technical, but it's kind of necessary. Then I select a row from the G sheet, and what I'm doing is I'm selecting. I have a row here called initial data, and what initial data does is it holds calculations for what my last submission request number was, what my next submission request number is, as well as formulas to add um, to the row. So I hold formulas in here. So I this row and kind of put that memory in the workflow. Then this next step, number 4, is when I actually add it to the submitted data. So I'm taking the data that I just read here in this initial data, plus what they put in the form, and I'm adding it to the submitted data sheet. So I'm adding it here, what my submission number was, who the submitter, and all this form data. And here, this orange stuff are the formulas that I just read before. So here are the formulas that kind of does some of the calculation. Then I send a message to send an ephemeral message to the user that their submission was accepted. Then I read the information. What I read here is I read what their weekly totals are. So I come back over here to the participant list and I read what their weekly totals are. That's what this select does. And then I output that channel using variables that I've read previous here in the workflow. So that's what when I input the form, when I input their steps, that's how this one was built. for the team reports, here's an example of team 1. So the first thing I do is, of course, it starts from a URL, it starts from a link. Then I send another formal message to the user that says, hey, it's of course been submitted. Click here to go see the reports, which is just a hyperlink to the app section in your sidebar. And then here, you'll see multiple selects because I'm selecting each single user. Right now, workflows can't loop. So this has to be statically set. So for team 1, you'll see that I've got 4 different selects. That's because team 1 has 4 different users, rows 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm doing a select on 4 different users. And then I send a message to the person with all of these variables from the steps that I've read previously. And then the team totals are just the same thing. It's instead of reading individual users, my sheet over here has some calculations at the bottom where it's calculating the team information. So as you can see here, I'm doing some calculations, some VLOOKUPs. So in my workflow, all I'm doing is selecting each single row so that I can read that into workflow memory and then output that to the channel. So good question. I'm more than happy to talk about it in more detail, after we get over Vlad stuff. So
Awesome. And then very quick,
Mhm.
does this work with Excel as well?
I'm a Google person, so I have a Google license. If you have Excel Office 365, there are steps in Google. I'm sorry, there are steps in Slack workflows for Excel that you can, of course, add, delete, and select, update a worksheet. So yes, it will work with Excel if you have Office 365, and you can use these steps. It does work with Excel. To answer that
Awesome.
question, yes.
Thank you
But
so much.
I can't show you an example of that because I'm a Google person. I have Google workspace. So yes.
No worries, all good. Yep. And then Dave, just high level again. So having users input data into a Slack workflow, inputting that into Google Sheet, and then using Slack to look at and grab that data and pull it back to give a high level summary of steps would be that high level workflow.
Yep. High level. Yep. So yes. So again, yes. Slack user uses Slack to put the data in to get the information into a form. Slack uses that data and then adds it to a G sheet. And then the G sheet has a bunch of calculations. So as puts it in, the G sheet says, hey, I've got new data with formulas. Let me calculate these formulas. So it calculates the formulas. Then Slack uses the workflow to read it. So it reads the updated values with the formulas and then puts it into the channel. Yes. Google Sheets are one of my favorite things about workflows. So yes, I use them all the
Awesome.
time. Mhm.
And lots of chatter about that in the Slack community. So if you haven't already, I would definitely say join in there. I'll try and grab the link for y'all. Thank you so much, Scott. That was awesome. All right, Vlad.
How
Super
are
excited
you?
to have you. Good. How are you? Are you ready? We're
Awesome.
excited. This is like a warm up for your discussions later, your event with Jillian. Can't wait to hear more about that. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with Slack.
Yeah. So I'm Vlad. I am losing my voice first of all, which is a good anticipation for a later discussion with Jillian. But so I'm Vlad. I'm one of the chapter champion leads for San Francisco. Also the founder of Vocal. And at Vocal, we use ticketing and workflow automation to streamline IT and HR and customer support operations in Slack. Um, So I think I got into Slack years ago, and I think part of the stuff that I wanted to talk to today about was the kind of startup journey inside of Slack. I think I'm in the Bay Area, so obviously all we think about is startup stuff, which it's true. Um, so the stuff I wanted to talk about was starting out, how we kind of started using Slack, and I think that's also how I started using Slack. Was I got introduced to it. I was previously working at LinkedIn. We were using it all the time. It got kind of it got brought in despite what any of the management wanted. It was fun because it got brought in, and then by the time it was kind of like rampant, everyone was using it, and then the management went, "What the hell? Why are we using it?" Anyway, so Slack was brought in. I got introduced to it there, and then what I noticed was Slack was just kind of the thing where everybody worked. It was just like the central point of where people do stuff. So because of that, when I left LinkedIn and started Focal, I was looking at what are the productivity tools that people use and kind of like what are the things that people are already doing. Because I'm kind of a strong believer in this, like just swim with the stream, don't try to swim upstream in terms of getting user engagement. So I was looking at how do we engage and how do we interact with existing tools like Slack to kind of build out better workflows and make people more productive. So it's, I don't know, at a high level, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's awesome. Who doesn't love a good startup, right? Just like a good Excel sheet. What do you think is your favorite feature for Slack?
I have probably a lot. The feature, I mean, the thing that I was going to talk about today was not necessarily my favorite feature. I'm probably going to be, I'm probably going to be basic and just say like something like emojis or something. I do like workflows. I haven't used them enough. I do like, the stuff that Scott's talking about, but I don't think I use workflows enough. Starting to, but I think I'm going to be kind of basic and just say something like emojis. Or
That's
shared channels. Shared channels, actually.
Share channels are good. Awesome. All right, why don't you talk us through your use case and then how you got unstuck with Slack?
Awesome. So yeah, so this is kind of more about when I, starting out Focal. Early on, we wanted to make sure that we have very good conversations with customers, very direct conversations with customers. And what we found out was kind of the best ways to do that was in Slack. I think historically, when people are starting out, it's like you want to have as close of a relationship with customers as you can with your customers, your prospects, kind of people that are using the product, and you want to enable that like very quick communication because you want immediate feedback. You want people to tell you how things are going. If people are leaving, it's bad. So what we did was we created a Slack Connect channel with every single customer. And actually, what we did is before we even created, even before they became a customer, we created a Slack Connect channel with them. So on the back of my business card, I have a QR code that if you scan, it creates a Slack Connect channel with us. And what we realized is that early on, if you create a Slack Connect channel with us, you're pretty likely to buy from us as well later on. So it's a good kind of sales tactic, but also it's just a good way to get them. So to kind of share, so I'll talk a little bit about how basically we worked with customers early on, and then how that kind of expanded out. Let me just share screen. Oh crap! And it's telling me to capture screen. For some reason. 1 second. One sec. Sorry.
It's not a real demo unless something doesn't work.
Exactly. Can you see my Slack?
I can definitely see that you're sharing a screen, but it is blacked out for me.
Ugh. Oh, that's great. I apologize for this.
No worries. We all helped me get through the Google sharing, so we will figure this out.
It says share system settings, which has already been enabled. Why is it doing that? 1 second. Let me just like refresh or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he dropped.
When he refreshed, it kicks you out and then he'll jump back in. I've had that happen before.
I did see a question earlier from Anna Lilia. She asked, "What's a chapter?" So Nicole, I'm going to give you to answer that since your chapter is so good.
Oh, Scott, no pressure. So, and I'll send the links in the chat, but what a great question. So there are many, many chapters or groups. So if you're familiar with Salesforce user groups, we've got the same construct on the Slack side. So we've got chapters popping up in different areas. So it's a group of folks that are meeting really to talk about and learn about Slack, various skill levels, right? Complete noobs to very advanced folks like Scott teaching us the path forward. Mine is King of Prussia, PA. I know Scott's out in Texas, so they're all over the place. And on the Slack community site, oh yeah, I'll get you hooked up, Vlad. On the Slack community site, you can actually search for a local chapter, and a lot of us are doing remote things. So you can even join chapters that are not specifically local to you. Like I did join the New York one and a couple other ones. Just so that I can get notifications for when they're doing remote sessions. Anything else you want to add in there for that?
No, also on the Slack community site, there is a overall calendar, so you can see all community events. Mm-hmm. So even though you may not join the King of Prussia chapter or the New York chapter, you can always see when their events are and what events are happening all across the world that you can always join. So,
all right. So, yeah. I'm popping that in the chat too.
Sorry about this. I figured this was working earlier. Maybe as a backup, does anybody want to volunteer to share a screen and I can walk through it?
Let me see if I can get my demo word going.
Well, we can at least see the screen.
Oh, there we go.
Cool. This will. All right. So one of the things that helps is okay. Here, let me share this, everybody.
No, you're fine.
All right, so as to kind of start this off, so the idea is what we wanted to do was really early on, we wanted to bring in all of our customers into Slack channels, kind of as already mentioned, right? Now the way to do that is we basically built a Slack Connect channel with every single customer. Let me share this tab and kind of do that. So as a very, okay, so can you see my, it's loading.
Yes. Yeah, it was showing. It was showing though.
Okay. Yes, it started the Slack one. Okay, good. Okay, that's all right. So, see, I have like a demo set up and everything. All right, so we're gonna create a brand new channel. Now, this brand new channel is going to be basically like the idea here is we're going to create a channel with every single one of our customers. So we're going to start off with a blank channel. We're not going to do any templates for the time being. Over it, you might want to use some templates. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it test customer, well, 3 in this case, but the idea is usually want to name it with the name of the customer and your company name. So normally what I would do is I would probably name it something like Focal Acme, shared or something like that. And the reason for that is by the time he gets to the shared channel, by the time he gets to the customer, they have your company name in the channel, so they know exactly who you're talking to. You have their name in the channel, you know exactly who you're talking to. Whether you create a public or private probably doesn't matter much, but it's kind of up to you. So we're going to create a channel. The first thing we're going to do is make this kind of personalized. So the first thing, so you can obviously change the name. A lot of people are nowadays things like canvases where you can kind of have specialized messages to customers. Also common resources. So for example, maybe you want to add a canvas, and within that canvas you want to add kind of common things to get, to get help from to get support maybe. So for example, for us, we might have a canvas that says, welcome to Focal, in this case, our company, and you would say something like, to get support, please, send a message in the channel. You could probably spell that correctly as well. And then one of the other common things that we get is if we have any kind of issues or something, we often put like useful links. So for example, our uptime here is status.ext.focal.io, for example, right? So this would be a link to just get our status uptime. So really, you want to provide customers with useful links, because then they'll be kind of see this stuff easily. So once you kind of provide provide some kind of helpful content for customers to engage with you, and maybe give some, kind of expectations, maybe set some hours of operation, that kind of stuff here. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go to the messages tab, and I'm going to make it a little bit nicer for them. Now for that, I'm going to use Block Kit Builder. That was the tab I had open a second ago. I kind of am scared to share tab or change tabs again, because this thing might break. So if you look at Block Kit Builder, and I can share a link in a minute, but what it allows you to do is create a like a template where you can go in and modify the template, use it, bookmark it, and then whenever you create a channel, you can actually send that the template into that channel, so that any new people can see that template. So let me do that now. Okay, so this is basically what that template from Block Kit Builder looks like. There's a big green send button top right. After this, I can switch back to that Block Kit Builder view to show you that. But the idea is that this is sending a message to the customer, so that as soon as they channel, they're getting this like nice welcome message, also with kind of similar to your canvas. It's just helpful links, helpful content, stuff that might get them kind of early on. So now they've created the channel, you've created a canvas, you've created all this information for them. Now you're ready to go and share the channel. So to do that, it's very easy. Just go to any of the channel settings stuff. Go to settings, I think, integrations, I forgot where it is now. Share the link, and you can either add people directly and send an email to that person, or you can probably more often you're going to click share link. You're going to copy that link, and then you just send them an email with like, hey, please join us for Slack Connect. So this is the only time you're sending an email through this. You send a link to Slack Connect. Once they join it, they'll be part of this channel. So that's the first part. That creates the channel. That creates all that bi-directional, or that creates the conversation, the place where people can actually have conversations. Before I move on, any questions about that?
No, but Scott did share the Block Kit Builder link in the chat. Thanks, Scott.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, Block Kit Builder, great tool for this kind of stuff. Awesome. Now the next part is, this is why I was kind of coming back to emojis being great features. One of the question is, how do you make sure that you're capturing and you're responding to and you're interacting with all the customer stuff? So the idea here is having a good balance or good memory, I guess, of using emojis. Now the idea is that as you grow, right in the beginning, it might be one or two of you in a channel, it might be a handful of you in the channel. But as you grow the company, you might have more and more people in the channel that might need to respond. So to ensure that there's not as much of this like, oh, has this customer been responded to? Are you talking to them? Is somebody handling it? Let's say a customer comes in and says, hello, I saw the new feature. How do I use it? So what you're going to do is, let's say you see this message from a customer. What you're going to do is when you come in, if you are the one that's going to respond to it, and just basically it's basic stuff, but remembering to use emojis. Usually the standard is, you use the eyes emoji to indicate that, hey, you're looking into it. You respond to it directly in the thread. Make sure to use threads for this stuff, because then you can have multiple conversations going on at the same time. So you respond with, please check out our help article to use it. blah, blah. So you kind of respond, you have that entire conversation with the customer directly in the channel. Since this is a shared channel, they'll be messaging you, you'll be talking to them directly. And then the idea is that once you're actually completed, once you're done, you can use a different emoji, usually it's the green check mark emoji to kind of indicate that this is done. The reason you do that, put a top message, the reason you do that is because when you're going down the list of the main channel, you're easily able to see like, okay, these are the questions that I've picked up because I've used the eyes emoji. These are the questions that I've finished because I use the check mark emoji. So it's an important way to make sure that you're not missing stuff with the customer. The other thing to keep in mind is important customer threads. You want to be reminded about this stuff, or you want to make sure that things are brought in. So you can don't turn notifications. You can be reminded about certain messages. So keep all these kind of like features accessible because you want to make sure that you're not missing the conversations that are happening in threads. So keep them up to date.
Reminders. Quick question in the chat. Will a client who joined a channel with Slack Connect become a regular regular user or a guest Slack user?
Neither. They are not a guest user. They're not a regular user because they don't have access to all of your channels. They have access to just that channel or just the channels that you shared with them. They're not a guest user. They're not charged. The only thing that in terms of like how Slack charges for it is that you have to have any kind of paid version of Slack. So you can have a single license of Slack and pay like $8 a month, and that's enough to get it to work. So there's no you don't need that, or you don't need any kind of a paid version, or you don't need any kind of like additional fees for shared channels or anything like that. But this does bring up an interesting point of what happens when customers don't have Slack. So a lot of people will do is in that case, instead of sending a shared channel, basically set up everything in the same way, but you invite people as single channel guests. So to do that, let's say that you have a customer, you set all this stuff up to them, you send them a Slack Connect channel invite, and then they go, oh, we don't use Slack, we use some really bad product like Teams. What you can then do is you can basically invite them as a single channel guest. You do that through, I'm trying to remember how to invite single channel guests. I can look that up. And then unless
I think you want to go hit focal at the top.
Yeah.
This is how I end up doing it anyway.
Invite people.
Tools.
There it is. Yeah. Oops, not this. So yeah. Damn it, I clicked the wrong button. Sorry. I clicked the Google button by mistake. Okay, let's try that again. So yes. So once again, if you need to invite somebody as a single channel guest, invite people to focal. Down here, guest, specify the channel. So in this case, it'd be the test customer 3. And then you can specify their email, stuff like that. So you can basically just say it's a single channel guest. And then in terms of the way that Slack charges for those users, in that case, these users as guests have only access to this channel. And then Slack doesn't charge you for those, but you do have a certain amount of guests to actual paid member ratio. It's like 10-1 or something like that. Any other questions about this part?
Not in the chat.
Great. So the last part, and this is where the workflow stuff starts being more interesting. With all of the stuff that Slack added recently around kind of workflows and automations and stuff. Well, I guess workflows and automations aren't that recent, but I guess the template stuff is a little bit more recent. Another way to get customers to engage is to start tracking conversations directly in Slack. The way we can do that is we build out a workflow. Now, I'm not going to go into workflows since Scott has already kind of handled that for us. So I already have a pre-built workflow. But what I could do is I could just say, hey, I'm going to take this create request workflow that we kind of already have. If you don't have it, you can create a workflow from a template. Actually, this is a template workflow. I didn't even modify this at all. So if you look for the create request template workflow, you can get that. But what you can do is, once I added that workflow here, let me go find it in my workflow tab. I need to go see the tab, I guess, for it as well, just to see it. Let's display that. Load tab eventually. Something isn't slacking. As you said, if something doesn't work, then if everything works as a demo, then it's not the right kind of demo. I'm gonna try to refresh it. I'm wondering if it's just not. All right. Well, usually when you add a workflow, it shows up in the All right. Well, I'm a little lost, but and Scott, maybe this is your expertise, but what I'm trying to do here is that by adding a workflow and making a feature, what you can do is you can have the button show up at the bottom. And actually, here I did it in the other channels already. So what you can do is by creating that workflow that basically tracks requests, and all that it's really doing is just putting everything to lists. We're giving customers another way to actually engage, right? So one way is that by your workflow, they can still send a message in the channel. You can still respond directly to the thread. But the other approach here is that you can click on the create request button now, which is basically just invoking that workflow. So whenever this starts, it shows me a form. Something isn't doing something today. So in the demo you saw earlier, I guess with Scott, when you click on a button, it does just show you a form. It allows the customer to fill in like, okay, what is their issue? What is the priority of their issue? What is the description of their issue? And then it just creates a message directly in the channel. So then this way, customers are able to track it and have that conversation. Not quite sure why it's working directly right now, but usually this just does display a form and allows the customer to fill it out. The idea of having customers fill out forms, it's a little bit more friction. So it's kind of a question of whether, are you trying to balance between giving the customers a little bit more friction, a little bit less friction. But the idea is by giving them a little more friction, you have them fill out exactly what the problem is beforehand, so that by the time you're actually looking at the request, you know everything you need to know about that request without having to kind of do this back and forth of like, oh, which part of the product are you facing this issue, or is this a very important issue or not? And the other part of that is based on if it's an important issue or not. You can kind of immediately glance at it and go, hey, I need to take care of this right away. Versus if it's a low priority issue, you can go in and say, okay, this isn't the most important thing. We can take care of this in a little bit. But that's kind of the stuff I wanted to cover if today, but for some reason this isn't workflowing.
I think your Slack probably thinks it's Monday, and it's trying to
something like that. Yeah, I think my whole browser thinks it's Monday since it didn't want to share the screen either.
It's a Monday, it's Tuesday. I love featuring the workflow though, and then kind of forcing. I know it is a little bit of friction to your point, right? But forcing the action, because it gets us, I think, away from some of the back and forth, right? Where, oh, well, now I need this to go help you, or just giving them that form up front forces them to fill the 4 or 5 things that you need to go do the thing that you want to do for them. So I love that.
And keep in mind that like when you do internally, like this is probably more designed for internal workflows and internal requests. When you're working with internal customers, it's probably a little bit like you can have a little bit more friction. On external customers, you probably want to have less friction. Like the more friction, the kind of the lower the customer support value, or the lower the CSAT. So you probably want to reduce the amount of friction. Maybe have a very short form when you do this, really mostly indicating the priority and kind of maybe a high level description and maybe a couple of things so you can help route the request, but don't make it too long.
Such a good call out. Okay, what other questions do we have for Vlad? Been seeing some really great ones in the chat. Love the engagement. Anything else that you want to share, Vlad or Scott, about just jumping in and using Slack to solve all of your problems?
No, I'm a firm believer of just jumping in and trying it out. Learn as you go. Luckily, Slack does a pretty good job of trying to guide users through something. Like with workflows, I know there's templates out there, and they kind of not build it for you, but they try and build it for you. And even if you're using the Slack AI product, you can type in, "Hey, I want to create a workflow that does this," and Slack AI will try and build it for you. Um, so I think with any Slack feature, whether it's workflows or lists or Canvas, the best way to learn is by doing. You're going to retain so much more by doing it. Just get in there and play with it, and saying, "Hey, what does this do, and what does it mean when I do this?" And just try it. Just play it. You're not going to break things. so yeah.
Awesome. Vlad, any other final thoughts?
No, I mean, I think the general idea here is that there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Just go and try stuff and go and do stuff. I think my big takeaway here isn't necessarily about a specific Slack feature, but in general, just build Slack Connect channels with your customers. It creates a much better interaction, much better relationship, and it creates that like long lasting relationship. So that's my only kind of my key takeaway here is just build Slack Connect channels with your customers.
Love it. And then you have an event tonight too. Do you want to plug that real quick?
Sure. If you are in San Francisco or the Bay Area, we will be meeting up at the Dovetail office. Thank you to them. We'll be Julian Bruce, who is in the channel somewhere. She will be interviewing us, and there's a handful of people talking about developer stuff and just kind of about. I think the context is around startups and developers and building on the Slack platform. So if you are in the Bay Area, come join and get some pizza and beer.
Awesome. Scott, do you have any upcoming events you want to share about?
Our next event is in 2 weeks, I believe. I think it's December 13th. It's Trailblazer Aid. It's in conjunction with not all the, but a lot of Salesforce communities across the country. We're all getting together to volunteer at a food bank on that day, which is the 40th anniversary of Live Aid, I believe, Live Aid or Farm Aid. And we're all volunteering at a local food bank. And yes, food will be provided. So yes.
Awesome.
And that's in conjunction again with the Salesforce community as well. And same date across the country. So that's our next San Antonio event. So.
Awesome. Lots of good stuff coming up. We're going to have another Getting Unstuck with Slack in about 4 weeks. So look out for that. Please join the Slack community workspace. Join a chapter. Find one. It doesn't have to be ours. Find something local to you or anything out there that looks exciting. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Jillian, for popping in. Vlad, thank you so much. Scott, thank you so much. I'll talk to you very soon.
Thank you for